Hey there, everybody. A lot of you already know me. My name is Gene Fleming. I live here in Northeast Alabama in the United States. And, let's get some of the essentials out of the way. If you've never watched one of my videos on YouTube, first of all, I'm glad you're taking some time out of your day to listen to a guy like me talk to you about things that are important to him. And I assume because the title of this YouTube video caught your attention, that you have some interest that are right up my alley. And what is my alley? Well, I'm a fitness trainer, and that may be hard to believe because when we think of fitness trainers, we typically have this stereotypical idea in our minds of somebody that's 25 to 35, maybe 40 or so, who's really buff and really muscular and really hyped up and high energy well, that's not me. That's not me. It has never been me, although some people say I do talk a little fast. Don't know where that came from, but I want to give you some background on me and how I got to where I am today, to where I'd even be doing a YouTube video. Um, as I may have mentioned before, I am the creator of the Pushing 60 Aside podcast, and that podcast has been out and available on the major platforms for about 5 years. We're in our fifth season, episode 5 or so, I think. And, I had a story to tell, and that's how I got to where I am today. The story is, I'm going to give you the really condensed version because I don't want to spill all the beans in just one YouTube video. But the short version is, I retired from the Navy in 1997, and I went to college for a few years and finished up some degree work that I needed to do. I worked in the civilian workforce for, I guess 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And I did a variety of jobs, things that interested me. And I worked as a private school principal for a couple of years. And I worked in ministerial capacities. I worked as a hospital chaplain. And I've always had a heart for people. The one thing I didn't do very well during those years of transition from being active duty Navy, I didn't take very good care of myself. I was on the road a lot. Most of the time, my meals were eaten in my truck or my car. I spent a lot of overnights at hospitals. Um, I was present for a lot of funerals. It's hard. It's hard life. I have the distinction of having been with a lot of people at the time of death, and that just comes with hospital chaplaincy. Well, during these years where I was working so hard, I was also maintaining a farm and a lot of livestock. And so one day I'm on the tractor, and the next day I'm at a bedside in a hospital. And that's just the way my life went. I enjoyed what I was doing. I enjoyed the people part of what I was doing. And I enjoyed the farming part of my life, and I enjoyed fishing and hunting, and I even enjoyed golfing. But the sad truth about me is I did not take care of myself very well at all from about 1997 until 2010, a period of about 13 years. And over those years, because I ate so poorly, I rested rarely, and I worked really hard, I was experiencing what some would call a certain level of burnout. I was trying to be too many things to too many people, and I spread myself so thin that I wasn't a whole lot of good in any one of those capacities. I might have been okay. I might have gotten the job done as necessary, but a caution about burnout, even as we age, it can happen, and you find yourself in somewhat dire straits like I did. I am not proud of this part of my life story, but during those years where I was working so hard, taking care of so many other people, I progressively got heavier and heavier, and I got sicker and sicker. And then in 2004, I was in a couple of automobile accidents that really ravaged my spine, and so I had a lot of pain issues. I hate to to say that, but I did. And so it was doctors and referrals to neurologists and orthopedic surgeons, and the process just went on and on. And plus, I had a propensity for migraine headaches, which are those of you that have had them, you know that a migraine headache is a day buster. You start out well, the migraine sets in, and then you shut down because you really cannot function. And so there were times when I needed to function and be in one of my roles that I could not be because I literally could not stand to be inside my own head because the pain was so intense. So I saw these doctors, and over the years, more and more and more prescriptions were prescribed, and they included opioids and muscle relaxers and antidepressants and things like gabapentin, drugs like that I took in good faith that the doctors were treating all that was wrong with me. Plus, during those years, I had a number of surgeries and procedures done on my spine, my neck, and but the end of every day, I was in chronic pain. I mean, pain that made it hard to breathe, and I couldn't sleep in bed anymore. So, for about 3 years there, I was relegated to mostly living in a recliner and playing games on my laptop and watching television. And I continued to get larger and larger. And, when I was on active duty, I typically ran about 180 to 190 pounds. But within a few years after retirement from the Navy, I was rocking the 220 mark or so. And I would be classified at that size as being obese then. But over the next 10 years or so, my weight would press real close to 300. And to be honest with you, I quit weighing because the tail, or the tail as they say, for me was the size of my pants. In the Navy, I had worn size 36 pants, and by the time this period of burnout and pain and everything came together, I was wearing size 46 pants, and I had difficulty breathing, and I had difficulty sustaining any level of physical activity. That is particularly hard. Well, it's hard for everybody, but it's particularly hard for men who've always been really active and physical and able to do most anything they need to do, whether it's on the farm or project around the house. Even when it comes to hunting or fishing, if you can't enjoy those because your pain level is high, well, it's not a very enjoyable outing. And so, along about 2010, my wife and I made a decision to move. And, I was not in the physical shape to execute a selling of one home, buying of another, and moving 370 some odd miles from where we lived near Mobile, Alabama, to Northeast Alabama. That just doesn't make any sense. Really, it doesn't. Why would somebody in my condition choose to move? And the reason is I found a better doctor. And it took some time, and that doctor was located in Huntsville, Alabama. His name is Dr. Dean Willis. He's a neurologist, and he's one of the top neurologists in the state of Alabama where pain management is concerned. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It's embarrassing to me to have had this chapter in my life where I became dependent on doctors and medicine just to manage my pain. But I got well. And so there's a story that needs to be mined in that realm there. How does somebody that's in chronic pain and on all these medicines, probably a dozen or more different medications, just trying to manage the pain, having back surgeries, having injections, having nerve blocks done, things like that. How does somebody get out of that trap of medical care? Because that's what it was for me. I don't like to talk about it a lot, but it's an essential part of the story because the story just takes off kind of from the getting well point until today. And so, it's 13 years later since we moved from the Gulf Coast up to Northeast Alabama, and it's a full 10 years later since I could look at myself in the mirror and say, I am so much better. I'm not 100%, but I'm so much better than I was. And so, what was special about this Dr. Willis, this neurologist over in Huntsville, Alabama? First of all, he wasn't a doc in a box and he wasn't a pill pusher. That's very important when you're seeking genuine relief from spinal pain. And by this time, when I saw him, it was safe to say that I already had congestive heart failure. I was pre-diabetic at a minimum, maybe diabetic, but I wouldn't get tested. I didn't want to be tested for diabetes because I was quite sure I already had it. I had neuropathy and so many other things going on that I was a sick person. On top of all that, I was chronically depressed. I was depressed with a reason, though. I was depressed because I could not function as a man anymore, at least how I thought in my head how men are supposed to function. Men are supposed to do the yard work. Men are supposed to chop down the dead tree. Men are supposed to go to work. Men are supposed to take care of their home and their families. And when you get relegated to a position where you can't do that, it is a soul-crushing experience because you begin to wonder about your worth. You begin to wonder about your value, and you also begin to wonder about your longevity. I guess it was in 2010 that a doctor, a general practitioner, looked at me and said, at the rate you're going, you probably will not live to age 55. And that was a blow to me. I mean, nobody wants to be told when you're 52, to start making your final arrangements. Truth was, due to the amount of medication I was on and the condition I was in, it was going to be difficult at best for me to even sustain this biology of life inside me. I was very discouraged, very depressed, and I'd even ideated in the realms of suicide at one point. So, what did this doctor do for me that I couldn't do for myself? My wife couldn't do it for me. My general practitioner couldn't get me through it. This Dr. Willis, when he agreed to see me, and that's how it worked, he agreed to see me as a potential patient. I had to be screened. I'd never had a doctor screen me before to see if he would even allow me to be in his practice. And I really didn't understand all that because my mindset at that time was just, help me get over this pain that I'm in. Help me get back to a place, at least a marginal place of functioning and living so that I can thrive as a husband and a father and an everyday guy. I didn't want to be anything special. I just wanted to be an everyday guy who could go and do the normal things that everyday guys do. Well, Dr. Willis, the first day I met him, he sat down with me and he had reviewed my medical records at that point, and he got to know me as well as you can in one doctor's visit. He sat there and looked at me and took it all in, the surgeries I'd had and the medications I was on. And he looked at me with a very sincere tone and he said, "Son, I cannot help you." Well, at that point I was thinking, hey, Doc, you're my last great hope. If you can't help me, who can? Who can? He said, "I can't help you, but I know somebody that can." And I thought perhaps he knew of another neurologist. And that's not what he was talking about. Dr. Willis at that point leaned over and we were sitting face to face, but he was close enough to me that he reached over and he put his hands out on my knees. And then he said, "Would you mind if I prayed with you?" Well, let's be honest, I wasn't in a mood to be prayed for at that point. I wasn't of the mindset that I had much faith to go on. Not his faith, not my faith. I was just, I was a broken person. And so he prayed for God to heal me. And I was kind of indifferent about that in the beginning. But by the time he finished his prayer, which probably wasn't 2 minutes long, I found that I had tears streaming down my cheek, because what I picked up from this doctor wasn't so much whether he was a Baptist, a Methodist, a Pentecostal, or Catholic, or even Jewish. I didn't. That wasn't it. What I felt from this doctor was a sense of genuine compassion for me as another human being. And so then he got down to the brass tacks of the matter. He said, if you want to be in my practice, I have some requirements of you. Now I'm starting to listen, because the doctor has credibility with me. He admits that he alone does not have the skill set required to help a person like me get well. Okay, that's fair, right? That's fair. A doctor who knows his limits. He knows he's not magic. He knows that he can't undo a lifetime or a history of injuries and degenerative disc disease, but he knows that he can help me learn to manage pain. So he's got some rules. Ha, boy, did he have some rules, and I wasn't ready for that. I really, really wasn't ready for this baptism by fire that this religious man was about to prescribe for me. But it kind of went like this. Mr. Fleming, if you're going to be in my practice, here's the way it goes. You're going to have to attend 3 months worth of pain management classes. I'd never heard of such a thing. I didn't know you could go to class to learn how to deal with a physiological issue. And he said, rule number 2, you have to have a full psychological evaluation by our staff psychologist. And I said, whoa, 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 I'm not crazy, man. I'm just sick and I'm in pain. He said, I know. He said, but we can address just your body, or we can address your lifestyle, or we can address your thinking, and we can address your psychological makeup and try to discover what all is working together to keep you trapped here in this incessant pain. You know, when you're desperate, and I was desperate, when you're desperate, you weigh things out pretty quick sometimes. And I thought to myself, okay, this is doable. This man wants me to go to his pain management classes. I can do that. And he also had one more rule. This was the third big rule. He said, if you take any medications from any other doctor than me, or if I test you on a random drug test and there's anything else in your system besides legally prescribed drugs, you're out. You fail to come to the pain management classes, you're out. You fail to participate in the psychological evaluation and counseling that goes with it. If you don't attend that, you're out. Really strict rules. Suffice it to say at this point, because of the sheer amount of medications I was taking, I likely had a degree of addiction to the opiate-based drugs, and there were several of them, not just one. It wasn't like he was giving me hydrocodone and that was it. And he wasn't the one who had prescribed all this stuff. One of my doctors had even prescribed oral fentanyl for me, and by now everybody has heard of fentanyl and how it's a very powerful drug that's been said to be 100 times more powerful than morphine. And one of my doctors had prescribed that for me. And so I was taking a cocktail of really serious drugs. It was first brought to my wife's attention and my attention of the ridiculous amount of medication that I was being prescribed by the doctor who was going to do my colonoscopy. And he said, "You're taking what? You're taking how much of that and how much of this and how much of that? And who prescribed this? And how long have you been on this?" He deemed that I was not even safe to go under anesthesia for a colonoscopy. That really got us scared. I mean, it got us really scared. And so I, being the good military guy that I've always been, when the captain of the ship says turn two, I say aye, and I get with the program. And it wasn't an easy program to do. I started right away with the pain management classes, and at times it was not convenient to make those classes. At a minimum, it was a 75-mile drive from where we live to Huntsville. On alternating weekends, I was not even in Northeast Alabama. I was on the Gulf Coast, still closing out the house that we were selling and moving furniture and things like that. And so some weeks, I would leave the Gulf Coast on Friday evening and come up to our new home in Northeast Alabama, unload a truck full of stuff into our new house, and then on Monday morning, I was driving to Huntsville to go to a 10 a.m. pain management class. It was all fun, right? I was on the road, here, there. And sometimes I would go on Friday classes. So I'd leave my house in Northeast Alabama, go to Huntsville, attend my classes, and then drive the 360 some odd miles from there down to the Gulf Coast to continue working on our moving process. So what did I learn through all of that? Well, I can't relive all of those classes that I went to, but I learned something about pain, and I learned something about why most narcotic pain relievers are not good for long-term use. Your brain feels pain and tells you you're hurting when the pain first occurs, and of course your pain registered soreness. And so, when you stub your toe, there's no doubt about it, that pain is real. You feel it, and you look down to see if you tore a toenail off or something like that. And for the next week or two, that toe is sore, But the spinal pain that I had been treated with round after round of different medications, and those medications are legit. After I had surgery, I definitely needed pain medicine for pain management. What I didn't need was to stay on those pain relievers, those opioids especially, for week after week, month after month. And why is that? Even after the pain reliever has done its initial work in relieving the pain from the event, the injury, the surgery, whatever, your brain gets keyed into that signal in the beginning, and you get a little relief, but the brain sometimes falsely lapses into believing that the pain is still as bad as it was the day of the surgery, the day after the surgery, maybe up to a week after the surgery as you were in the healing process. And somehow that neural pathway gets stuck. It's like it's wide open. And so even after you've begun a thorough healing and should be starting to get back to some degree of normalcy, you still feel pain because your brain is stuck on open down to where that pain point of origin was, if that makes any sense. And so in the pain management classes, and I've never talked about this before to anybody but my wife, in the pain management classes, we came to understand that if your brain believes it or perceives it, to you it is real. And so when you say, "No, doctor, I'm still hurting, and the doctor believes you, because why would you lie about it? But and you believe yourself because your brain still thinks the pain is just as bad as it ever was. And so somehow we have to turn that off. We have to get in here and convince the brain that you're well, you're as healed as you can get, and the pain is not just like it was the day after the surgeon cut through your skin and went in and removed a disc or whatever he did. And so that learning about how pain works got me to a point where when I was in severe pain, I took on an attitude of like, imagine there's a cave over here and there's a dragon that lives inside that cave, and that dragon's name is pain. And on the days when that pain was the worst, that dragon was coming out and really getting me good, you know. But I got to the point through the pain management classes where I could look over there and I could see the cave in my mind and realize it was just the dragon, and the dragon is a liar. And I got to where I could say, oh, it's just you. It's just you. And I could disregard the pain signals that my brain thought it was feeling. Also, I learned to do some relaxation techniques during that time, and I learned to do some things that are not typical, but visualization exercises where, in a word, I could sort of meditate and speak to what I perceived to be the points of origin of the pain, and I could calm it down. I could calm it down. So I did 3 months of classes. I went through psychotherapy. I sat with my shrink, Dr. George. I sat with him. We talked through some things, and he taught me some things about me. You know, some of them were humbling, some of them were enlightening, but and I hadn't done anything wrong. In good faith, I had followed what the doctors had told me to do all along. The only thing was, there was no course of getting me completely well. There was just a course of presenting symptoms according to my perception of those symptoms. That's kind of deep. You know, I'll be the first to say that's kind of deep, and we're not often able to wrap our minds around that. So we moved here, Northeast Alabama, in 2010, and by 2013, I was well on the way to getting as well as I could get. It was at that point that my wife had heard of this new device called a Fitbit, a fitness tracker. And at that time, it was a little watch fob looking thing about this big that you clipped on your belt, and you went for a walk, and it tracked your steps, and it estimated your calorie burn and things like that. And it had an app for your phone, so you could kind of gauge what you were or were not doing every single day. And that was really critically important for a guy like me. I had gotten so sedentary and I was so heavy that, I couldn't have done a whole lot, even if I needed to or wanted to or had to do, because I was no longer a functioning human being. And so in the course of that 3 years of treatment, what Dr. Willis did for me was, one, he gave me some education through pain management classes. Two, he gave me psychotherapy. A lot of people are ashamed to say that they've had psychotherapy, but it's really not a bad thing. It's just having somebody to talk to when you're in a dark place. That can be a real help, and somebody that doesn't judge you in the process. And then we took medical approaches too. And so I was already on this cocktail of medications, and part of that process that he did with me was working and tweaking the types and the amounts of medication I was getting. And at the end of the, I guess, second year, probably 2012 or so, I went in one time and I said, Doc, I don't believe this bottle of pills is doing me any good. It was Neurontin or gabapentin. I said, I don't believe this is doing me any good. I don't feel any better for taking it, and I don't feel any worse when I don't take it. And then there was hydrocodone, which had been a staple in my treatment for several years at that point. And I said, Doc, I don't believe these hydrocodone pills really change my level of pain at all, not appreciably anyway. And he said to me, okay, Mr. Fleming, let's find out. He said, give them here. If they really don't help you, give them to me. And and so I took a 90 count bottle of Lortab 10 and I handed it to him. I said, okay, I'm game. Let's do this. Let's see if I really don't need them or if I'm just showboating or, trying to act tough or whatever it is. And his assistant in that moment took the lid off that bottle of pills, and she poured hydrogen peroxide on them and created a fizzy mess and threw them away. And I was like, I could have saved those in case I need them. He said, well, if you don't need them, then why would you save them? Food for thought. And so that was the last prescription of hydrocodone I ever had. However, I still had injectable medications that were being given to me, nerve blocks and things like that. So it's complicated. Like I said, it's a long story. But I said, okay, well, what about the rest of these drugs? Because I said, what are we going to do about them? And he said, tell you what, we'll just start weaning you off one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. He said, now, if some of these drugs are actually doing you some good, we can always put you back on them. I said, okay, that's fair. So before long, we were just scratching medications off left and right. I no longer felt like I needed an antidepressant, so it was gone. I no longer felt like I needed a drug called bupivacaine. I may even be saying that wrong, but it was part of a cocktail mix that they were infusing directly into my spinal column. And I had some problems with that kind of therapy there for a while. I'd lose the feeling into my lower body, and couldn't drive because I couldn't feel the gas pedal. So anyway, we worked and toyed with that until before long I was down to essentially no prescription medications. So I mentioned the Fitbit a little while ago. During this evolution, this process, my wife gave me that little Fitbit, and I'd been walking for several years now with a cane. I was dragging my my right leg. I had neuropathy pretty bad in both legs. And so I put my little Fitbit zip on my waistband and I walked out the front door. And that was a day that was the beginning of my life really changing. Despite all the treatment by the neurologist, the classes, the psychotherapy, the reduction of medications that I was taking, the truth was that during all these years of sickness, I had gotten morbidly obese. My body fat percentage was way up in the 40s, maybe even the low 50s at that point. And I had congestive heart failure. So aside from the pain issues, I was no longer a healthy person. And so I put my little zip on my waistband and I decided to go for a walk. Now, folks, I haven't walked any distance at all. About the longest I had walked anywhere would be getting out of my truck and going into Walmart, getting a few groceries and coming back out, or perhaps walking from the parking lot into my doctor's office. That was about all I had done. How I executed the move of our entire household of furnishings from the Gulf Coast to Northeast Alabama, I'll never know. But I did. Sometimes you can suck it up and do incredible things because you have to, and I think I could do those kinds of things if I had to. And so anyway, I walked out our front door and walked down the street, probably not a tenth of a mile. I got to the stop sign down at the corner, turned around and came back. And I came in the house, and I had no concept of um, what step counts were, you know, what was recommended, what was good for a guy like me. How far was a really good walk? How many steps do you take to have a therapeutic exercise walk? That first day I came in, I was really excited because I had amassed 1,200 steps. 1,200. And I thought, gee, that's pretty far. That must be like a mile. No, because I was taking a little baby steps with my cane, and I was still in pain. So I just plotted out, and anyway, I had 1,200 steps. But what my wife did for me was she sparked some motivation. And even though I was at least 285 pounds at that point, I'm just guessing, still wasn't weighing. Um, it's a lot to carry. I'm not a big guy. Otherwise, it's not like I'm 6'8". If you're 6'8", you can carry around 285 and be a pretty healthy fella. But when you're 5'7", that is not a healthy weight, and it wasn't a healthy body fat. So that was day one. And when I walked down to the stop sign and back, I was tired. It had been a struggle to walk just down to the end of the street and back, and it wasn't even a quarter mile. It seemed like a long way to me, but it wasn't. The fire started burning in me to do this walking thing religiously. I mean, to get out and go for a walk in our small town every single day. And so I started going past the stop sign, and then I started going around the block. And I guess, I don't know, my memory is not clear. It's not because I lost my mind. My memory, I did so much walking, I don't really know the exact timeline in, say, 2013, 2014. But I know this: within a year, the cane was gone. The cane was long gone, probably 6 months into it. And I started shedding weight pretty doggone fast. And I didn't know anything about weight loss. I didn't, but I was watching some shows on television that were popular at that time, like The Biggest Loser. And I saw people that looked like me that lost a phenomenal amount of weight in 1 year. But they had something I didn't have. They had a personal trainer. They had a staff that was preparing their meals. They had coaches. They had state-of-the-art equipment. They had a schedule. And, the story wasn't complete as far as what we saw as the viewing TV audience. We didn't realize these people were just busting it, 6-8 hours a day with different forms of exercise. And, we just thought, wow, in 1 year, this person lost 190 pounds. Woohoo! Maybe I could do that too. And so what I did was I started just eating better, and, quit having a pint of ice cream as a television snack at night. I just started cutting back, and there was a time I had weaknesses. I had food weaknesses. I was really fond of Ritz crackers and peanut butter. And, they come in tubular sleeves inside the box. And if I wanted Ritz crackers, I'd eat the whole sleeve with peanut butter. Not a healthy choice. It just wasn't a healthy choice. But I got where I was following some fitness coaches online, and I was reading books about weight loss, and I was picking up a little bit here, a little bit there. And I went to a more protein-centric diet with far fewer carbs, and especially far, far, far less sugar in all its forms. And you would think I would have melted like ice on hot asphalt, but I didn't. I walked. I ate fairly balanced meals. I didn't eat a lot of junk, but I tended to lose about 3 pounds a month for 3 years. And that's how my journey went. I didn't have periods where I lost like 20 pounds in 1 month. I didn't have periods where And I did have some periods where I didn't lose a single pound in a month, but for the most part, it was 1, 2, 3 pounds a month or so. And by the end of the first year or so, I'd lost about 30, 35 pounds. And by the end of the second year, I'd lost another 30, 35 pounds. Now, by the end of the second year, when you get 60, 70 pounds down from what you were, you really start to feel good. And your circulation is improving because you're now not walking a half mile a day. You're walking 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6, 7, 8 miles a day. Sometimes walking 3 miles in the morning and 3 miles in the afternoon. And those miles got progressively faster. And now I'm going to tell you briefly about a leaping forward point that happened for me a couple of years into this transformation, if you want to. Well, it was a transformation. I got off medications. I got away from doctors. I don't have to go to a neurologist anymore. I started exercising, and I started losing weight in a slow yet progressive fashion. No starvation diet for me. No, I couldn't do that. And I'm going to tell you, I ate a lot of protein bars. Some of them were really healthy protein bars, and some of them were as much sugar as they were protein. I just didn't know, and I was learning. But one thing's for sure, I wasn't eating an entire pizza by myself, and I wasn't eating 2 or 3 plates of pasta on nights we had spaghetti. I was able to now moderate and self-discipline with what I was actually eating. And so ice cream was gone. Pecan pie was gone. Oh, I miss pecan pie. I still have me a piece every Thanksgiving, though. I mean, I haven't sold my soul to the devil or anything like that. No. I still have some treats every now and then, but I don't abuse those treats. Not like I did for about a 10-year period. No more Little Debbie's snack cakes, and because there were times when I was doing chaplaincy work, I would just grab a 10-count box of Little Debbie oatmeal cookies and throw them in the truck with me, and that's all I ate during the day was just more and more cookies. So anyway, let's leap forward again. And so toward, I guess, what was the end of the second year of walking quite regularly with the Fitbit, I was looking at my wife one night and I said, I think I'm going to run to the store. I don't know what it was we needed, but I'm going to run to the store. And we lived in a small town, and there was a little convenience store probably about 8/10 of a mile from our house. And I said, I'm going to run to the store. And she said, why don't you? I said, why don't I what? She said, why don't you run? Why don't you run to the store? You said you were going to run to the store, leave the keys here, and run to the store. And it was about 7 o'clock in the evening. It was already dark, and, I had on short pants and some pretty good walking shoes, and I said, by gosh, I will. I had not run any distance at all since 1996, and here it is 2013, 14. And so I walked out the front door, got to the street, and I started picking them up and putting them down. Now, I was a conditioned walker at this point, but running and walking are completely different physical activities. And I couldn't run fast. And as I used to say on my podcast, and I couldn't run far, but I was going to try this. I wasn't even really conscious of how far it was to the store. I didn't know if it was a half mile, a mile, or whatever, but it turned out to be about 8/10 of a mile. And so I zigzagged my way through my little town, and before long I was at the convenience store. I don't even know what I went there to buy, but I turned around and walked out of the store with my purchase, and I didn't have the gas in me to run back home, but I still walked back home, so it counts. I got back home, and my wife said, well, how'd it go? And I said, I can't believe it. I ran all the way to the store. And it wasn't running. I mean, it was like jog it, as best I could do. But it pushed me to a new level where I was ready to think about maybe there's something for me now beyond just walking. And I started jogging. I'm gonna call it jogging. And it was brutal at first. My legs hurt so bad. My thighs, my quadriceps, everything hurt. My calves hurt, my hips hurt. But I learned as a trainer that the body goes through periods of adaptation, and anything that's foreign to us, it takes a while for our body to get used to doing something new, whether it's in weight training or aerobic activity, any of those things. It takes a while. And I apologize, this earbud keeps falling out. Anyway, so I decided to take this story live and on YouTube, because I know there are people out there that suffer with chronic pain, who are trapped where I was once trapped, who are suffering with issues due to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and any variety of other diseases. And plus you've got the age factor working against you too. And if this story, this tale, throws some hope in your direction, if it throws some light in that tunnel of darkness that you're in, I hope that it does. I'm not a miracle, okay? I'm not a miracle. It's not like I went to one doctor and he prescribed one drug and poof, I was free from pain, and then poof, I was able to be physically active, and poof, here's another pill with magic weight loss numbers, and back down to a normal size for a guy my height, and I was able to achieve that. And this story could go on for another 45 minutes because it's a long story. There's a lot of details to it, but I'm going to summarize that I was very sick and I got well, and I had to work to get well. Now I'm working to stay well. The dynamic of my life went from a person who could not do anything to a person that can do just about anything I want to do, need to do, or have to do. That's typical of a guy, from 60 to 70 years old. I don't have a magic formula. There's not a magic weight loss cookie that I can recommend. What I can recommend is a 3-tier approach to your health, period. 1, get the sleep you need. 2, modify your diet to give you enough calories to sustain your body and health functions. And 3, exercise 3 to 5 times a week. And I recommend, especially if you're just starting out and you've got this wall of issues ahead of you, including your health and your strength, I recommend bite off small chunks of everything. And I kind of meant that as a pun. I'm talking about, reductions in the amount of food you eat, corrections to the type of food you eat, a plan to exercise on a regular basis, a minimum of 3 days a week, but 3 to 5 days a week is really good. When your body adapts to that, consider adding some aerobic exercise to the mix, and add strength training to the mix as soon as you're ready. Aging wasn't a factor when I got sick, because I wasn't old yet. I was still in my 50s. But, now as I've continued to age, strength becomes more and more important every day. And I do strength training 3 or 4 days a week. And really that's all I need. That's all I need. I'm not out to become a bodybuilder at this age. No, I'm way beyond the vanity of something like that. What I'm doing is I'm trying to live out my golden years and keep them from being bronze. I want them to be really good. I want to be able to do things with my wife, with my kids, with my grandkids. I want to be able to play with my dog and not get winded. This afternoon is a nice afternoon. I went out and played a 9-hole round of golf. Why? Because it's exercise, and because the air was fresh and the sky was blue, and it's good for my mental health. It's good for my physical health. And, I played for about an hour and a half, and that was just fine. I was at one with myself, a golf club, and a golf ball, and nature. Until our next YouTube video, thank you for listening. I hope you found some pearls of wisdom in this YouTube video. I hope that when you look at your own life, and listen, I'm not expecting people to agree with everything that I say. I'm just telling you my story. You may have a different way of approaching these things than I do. I'm not here to argue with you. And if you don't like the video, just, well, thanks for spending some time with me. If you did like it, subscribe to my channel. People always say this on YouTube, don't they? Subscribe. I don't have one of those magic subscribe buttons I can point to, but you can see below the header on this video that you can subscribe and follow Good News Doc. That's Gene Fleming on YouTube. And I think that's a wrap. I'm going to call it the end for this video, and we'll catch you on our next broadcast.